Just to be safe so this video doesn't get its comments turned off and being flagged as kids content or something, I'm gonna say a few swear words just so YouTube gets off my ass. There's one. Fuck shit. This is the first volume for my new free web series, Gal the Ghost Princess. I think it's somewhere between a middle grade and young adult rating. It has the sort of mixture of whimsy and violence that a shonen anime would have, so depending on your standards, you might not want your children to read this. If you want to learn about some of my process behind writing this story, you can check out the companion video that went live the same time as this one, linked at the top of the description. If you want to read this story at your own pace, you can check out the link tree in the description that leads to places like Royal Road, Wattpad, and my personal website, where you can read this story without audio. I don't currently have a set schedule for chapter releases. I want to say once a month, maybe even weekly or bi-weekly, that I'll be dropping another 5 or so chapters, along with an audiobook, but no promises because I'm not yet sure. I'd appreciate any feedback on this story that you can give, and if anyone has any tips on how to get my audio sounding better, I'd love to hear it. I use a Shure SM7B mic, and I record in Audacity. You'll notice it sounds pretty crusty at parts where I need to raise my voice, which I can't do very well in the first place because of my health. I'll have more to say to you at the end, but other than that, let's get right into the story. I hope you enjoy. Chapter 1. The Spirit Crowns. Princess Gal threw her bedroom doors open to flee from the maids as they called out for her. "Gal!" Tanya yelped. "What about your hair?" Gal turned around and jogged backwards, her shoes tapping over the echoey hardwood floors. Tanya stood by the vanity mirror, holding a brush and clutching the back of the chair where Gal was supposed to be seated. "It's fine," Gal said. A curly strand of dark blue hair fell over her eye, and she tucked it behind her ear. "Y'all just get ready for the ceremony. I'll see you there." Tanya and the maids shook their heads with wry smiles. Gal turned back, running past the tall doors of the royal chambers where her siblings, cousins, aunts and uncles lived. Her cousin, Prince Warwick, peeked out of his room with a tired, grown-up scowl that didn't belong in his rosy-cheeked, 8-year-old face. He took after his older brother, Prince Owen, with similar devotion to royal responsibilities, studies, and other boring things Gal ignored as often as she could. "Hurry up!" Gal rushed past Warwick. "You're gonna miss all the fun!" "Fun is not what I am worried about missing," he sassed, trying to make his voice sound deep and proper. "Slow down in the halls!" "I'll slow down when I'm dead," Gal said, approaching the stairs leading down to the palace foyer. At the bottom of the stairs, Queen Morgan and her steward hurried out the door together while she signed documents from a huge stack the steward carried. "Hey, Mama!" Gal sat over the railing of the stairs and slid down rapidly. Without looking, Morgan said, "I hope everyone else is right behind you. We're running late after everyone fell asleep listening to your cousin's essays." Gal grabbed the post at the bottom of the rail, using her momentum to shoot across the foyer to the big doors leading to the courtyard. "They're probably worried about looking all fancy-like." She noticed a document had fallen to the ground behind the steward. She picked it up and shoved it into the stack as she passed. "Come on, you two! I don't want to miss the music!" Gal sprinted to the many horse-drawn carriages, awaiting in the walled-in, floral courtyard. The warm sky of dusk grew dimmer by the minute, to the encroaching, cool hue of night, and the northern lights that showed up only once a year teased their arrival with a faint, green glow. She couldn't believe it was already October 7th. The last 12 months had gone by, so slowly, and yet somehow she was still caught off guard by today, Star Ceremony Day, her favorite time of year. Her little sister, Princess January, brushed past the legs of Morgan and the steward, causing them to drop the papers. "Wait for me!" January laughed and ran into her big sister's arms. Her curly black hair was messy too, making her look like a miniature Gal, except Gal's dress was blue, while January's was red, like their mother's, and her skin was closer to the dark Oya tone of their mother, unlike Gal, who was washy pale like their father. Gal scooped her up and twirled her around in the air. "Ride with me, Jan!" Gal set her down and held her hand as they ran to the nearest carriage. She looked back at Morgan and the steward, shuffling through the scattered papers in the doorway, probably trying to find the ones that weren't already signed. Gal slowed to a halt and slacked her shoulders with a pout. Jan hopped in place. "Come on, Gally, I want to see the festivities." "Mama needs our help, Jan," Gal sighed, and pulled Jan back to the entrance. They sat amongst the mess of papers and tried to help organize them, even though Gal and Jan had no idea where any of them went. Most were warrants, requesting permission from the Queen to allow the police to incarcerate certain criminals. Many of them mentioned Talbot Federal Penitentiary, the offshore prison reserved for the worst of the worst. Most who disturbed the peace in New Machoka City, even for petty crimes, were considered the worst of the worst. "Please don't read those anymore," Morgan said bluntly. "Can't this stuff wait just one day?" Gal asked, handing a document to the steward. He thanked her. "Why don't the politicians deal with it? Ain't that why we turned into a democracy in the first place?" "We still have a responsibility, sweetheart," Morgan said, taking the rest of the documents from Gal's hands. "But our responsibilities lie with the ceremony and making everybody happy," Gal said. Morgan shuffled the papers, avoiding eye contact. "And these warrants make people happy as well." Gal glanced at the turquoise key crown on her mother's head. The big jewel in the center was shaped like a key, and the rest of the crown was filled with small, cubic and triangular gems. It caught some of the light from the darkening sky, giving it a purplish look. Gal thought, when she was queen, things would be different. She'd cut out the boring stuff and make every day like today, like Star Ceremony Day. "They make the stuffy old senators happy," Gal murmured and crossed her arms. "I'm talking about the people, Mama. The ones that really matter." "Those stuffy old senators are the people, Gal. That's why it's called a democracy." Gal slacked her head over her shoulder and rolled her eyes. "I know all that, but—" "Gal!" King Lawrence called from the foyer. "Come over here, I got something to show you." His voice was as wide and heavy as his big belly. Gal stood from the papers, crunching some under her shoes as she went to her father. "What's up, Daddy?" Before she even got close, she could smell the scent of peppermint coming from his breath, and he was already crinkling a candy wrapper in his big hand. "Don't mind if I do," she said. He handed her the mint, she unwrapped it, and tossed it into her mouth, savoring the purifying, pepperminty rush. And as if responding to a dinner bell, Jan ran up, saying, "I want one too!" Lawrence passed the mint to Jan, then used his eyes to direct Gal's attention to the spirit crown on his finely trimmed head of blue hair. "Don't you think you're forgetting something?" Each word that spat past his bushy mustache was powered by a large voice that might have sounded intimidating if it hadn't belonged to the most harmless teddy bear of a king on earth. She pushed the mint to the side of her mouth with her tongue. "I know, Daddy, my hair's a crazy mess, but "No," he said playfully, as he removed the lock crown from his head and lowered it to her face. It looked much like her mother's key crown, except the big turquoise center jewel was shaped like a key lock. In its reflection, she saw her own freckled face, gawking and slack-jawed. "Oh yeah, I nearly forgot." She gently took the spirit crown and turned around, staring into it. "It's my turn this year." "That's right," Lawrence said. "Now go out there and show your city how we have a good time." A faint rumble of drums echoed in the distance. That familiar, energetic sound of New Machoka City jazz was rousing to life. The sky was beginning to show stars and ethereal northern lights over the golden glow of the buildings. The gleeful spirit of the people in the city traveled with the wind and over the road connecting to the palace. Gal's heart danced as she looked out at the coastal brick city, imagining all the fun to be had that night. She giggled. "I don't think they're gonna need my help with that, Daddy." Chapter 2. October Night. Gal peered out the windows of the carriage with Jan as they approached the city. Her chest vibrated to the sound of men and women blasting trumpets and beating drums, beginning to overpower the rattle of the carriages and the clacking of horse hooves on the paved road. On the small cape near the city, the lighthouse flashed to life. Its bright lens shined across the sea and illuminated a nearby island where the dark penitentiary building was, a looming silhouette before the ocean horizon, a grim reminder of the darker things in this world and in this city. The lens moved away from the prison, and then harsh white lights flickered on from its windows and searchlights. Peaceful nights such as these were only possible because of the prison, because of those warrants Morgan had signed. But there had to be a faster, less tedious way to get all of that done, Gal thought. But she hardly dwelled on those kinds of thoughts for long. "I'll deal with it when I'm older." A small shadow approached the prison island. A boat? She couldn't tell. Who would be going to the prison, of all places, on Star Ceremony Day? She couldn't figure it out, and she was done dwelling on the thought. Gal adjusted the lock crown on her head, still trying to get used to wearing it. Unlike her cousins, she hated wearing tiaras. They fell off too easily when she played sports and exercised. But she'd make an exception for the spirit crowns, because of what they represented, because of what they could do. "Why do I have to ride with these two?" Warwick asked with his arms crossed, to the king and queen sitting across from him. Gal turned around and rudely wrinkled her face at him. "Well, you're the one who hopped in here." Jan turned around and made a similarly rude face. "Yeah, Warwick." "You're not supposed to say the W in his name, Jan." Gal wanted to say, but Warwick let out an irritated laugh. "That was before I knew you two were hiding under the seats to scare me." Gal and Jan giggled at the very recent memory. Warwick sighed. "I should have gone with Owen. Even Euphemius is easier to tolerate than you clowns." "You could always jump out," Gal said, then looked at the city again. They were almost there. "I might just do that," Warwick mumbled. Without meaning to, she looked at the prison again. The shadow, the boat, whatever it was gone. "Come on, guys," Lawrence said loudly but kindly. "It's Star Ceremony Day. There's so much good to focus on tonight." The more he spoke, the more Gal could tell his attention shifted from their bickering to his excitement for the holiday. "Music, games." She turned to him and said, "Rope scotch?" Her favorite game to play with her friends. She had a new record of jumps she wanted to show to them that would surely blow their minds. Lawrence shut his eyes and sniffed the air with a smile. And the food. Gal noticed it too. So many delicious smells wafting from the city by way of the wind. Meats were being roasted, bread was being baked, and all kinds of fruity and sugary scents mingled in the air with such richness she could practically taste it all. The carriage entered the brick thoroughfare connecting to the outside road. The buildings towered over Gal, and the golden windows sparkled in Jan's brown eyes. Tallest of all of them was the clock tower. Gal had been inside the clock before. Many cogs and steam pipes made the hour and minute hands turn, while orbs imbued with magic energy caused the bright shine that could be seen even from far offshore, almost as clearly as the lighthouse. The huge hour hand inched closer to 8 p.m., the time when the northern lights would finally be ready to open up to the Star Nation. The city jazz was so loud now, Gal could hardly hear herself think, just the way she liked it. The people in the streets erupted in cheers upon the arrival of the royal carriages. The upper-class city folk were dressed fancier than most of what Gal, Jan, or Lawrence ever wore. The upper class dressed more like Morgan, Warwick, and the other royals who preferred the more regal Washi style. But Gal loved the way the lower class dressed. Less ruffles, feathers, and wide dresses, more buttons, cute little bows, and slimmer clothes. And the hats. Bowler hats, top hats, fedoras, cowboy hats from further south. She had a whole collection at the palace. Their simpler attire was easier to breathe and move around in, too. The blue dress she wore now she specifically had tailored by someone from the industrial slums. Those regal dresses her cousins wore would make playing sports impossible. Morgan tapped on the wall of the carriage with her knuckle, signaling the driver to stop the horse. "All right, children," she said. "Before you go running off, let your personal guards find you." "Yes, ma'am," the children said. Then Gal and Jan zipped past Warwick to the door. They were greeted with accolades by the crowd. The carriage had stopped in the world-famous plaza, where the bronze Healing Wounds monument was, a big statue no taller than any of the surrounding buildings. It depicted a Washi man in a buttoned-up, commanding officer's uniform, shaking the hand of an Oya man with a feathered headdress over his long hair, and wearing an ornate shirt with traditional Oya patterns. Jan ran ahead to the shops. "January!" Morgan called out from the carriage. "I'll keep an eye on her, Your Majesty." One of Jan's personal guards ran after her. Gal put her hands on her hips and shook her head, laughing to herself at her little sister's wild energy. "Don't you go running off too, dear," Morgan said from behind Gal. A trumpet nearby played a lively tune, drowning out her mother's voice. Then the drums started up. Then the tuba and piano began playing. The band she was hearing was on a small stage, set up in front of an alley between some shops. Gal ran towards the music. Her mother might have been shouting at her, but she paid it no mind. The band played a fun, improvised song, but they were missing something. There was a magic voice amplifier box at the front of the stage, but no one was singing into it. The man on tuba turned his head to another sitting by the stage with his head down. "Yo, the royals are here!" The other man looked up, noticed Gal, and smiled. "Well, hey there, Princess Gal." Hey," Gal said. "How come you ain't singing?" He shrugged. "Ain't no words have come to me all day." "On Star Ceremony Day?" Gal laughed. come on. Well, why don't you give it a try then, princess? He motioned up to the stage. You know what? I think I will. She stepped up on the stage. From where she could see, a few guards had followed her. Morgan and Lawrence stood behind them with their own escort, and Warwick seemed to have gone off somewhere else. That was one less buzzkill. Gal looked at the healing wounds statue, and then up to the northern lights that finally shined at their brightest in the night sky. I'll see you soon, Tete, she whispered to herself, thinking of her grandmother. Gal cleared her throat, then got close to the voice amplifier and sang. Once again, we're here together this wonderful October night. The crowd turned their attention to her as she continued, to play some songs and eat sweet treats as we gaze up at those beautiful lights. 'Cause we miss our loved ones who can't be here every single day. But for the next 3 weeks we'll indulge in sweets with the ghosts of yesterday. The man by the stage stayed right where he was and finally began to sing. Thanks to the royal family, the ones who protect the crowns, we look forward to this day when the spirits come around. Gal in the crowd danced to the music, and she continued. All year long our hearts just ache for our dear departed relatives. But when the skies light up and those pretty crowns touch, we'll laugh and dance and sing with them. So thank you all for joining me in this moment of our lives. The crowd and the male singer joined in. We share this time with our long-lost husbands, brothers, sisters, and wives. Gal took the next line. Though life is short, we can face our deaths knowing this night every year. We're gonna have some fun for the next 3 weeks with those we love right here. Sing it with me, people! And sing the people did. Once again, we joined together this wonderful October night. So for the next 3 weeks, it's party and games with the ones who passed up into the light. 'Cause we miss our loved ones who can't be here every single day. But when the spirit crowns meet, they'll get to walk these streets. For the next 3 weeks, they'll be right here to stay. Morgan gracefully stepped in front of the stage and sang in a low voice as she looked at the healing wounds statue. Everyone's eyes went to it. Her somber tone brought down the jovial energy. The band even matched her mood. Centuries ago, this country was filled with war. The Oya and Washi were destined to fight forevermore. Gal shook her head and sang vigorously, bringing the energy back. But enough about that, we're living in better times. We get to stomp our feet and clap our hands, 'cause the party's just starting when we lose our lives. Oh, they're coming, said they're coming soon, alright. Y'all's grandfolks and cousins and everyone who's died. Morgan approached the stage, gently grabbed Gal, underestimating her 13-year-old's weight with trembling arms, and set her on the ground. She sang again, and the band again matched her mood. That's because our ancestors sacrificed themselves to open up the star roads so we can share in nights like these with spirits young and old. That's right, Mama, but no need to bring up the drama, Gal sang, parkouring over cafe tables and windowsills to climb up to the top of a canopy over a shop's entrance. Her mother called out for her to climb down, and Gal's guards stood below with arms outstretched, expecting her to fall. But she just continued to sing. 'Cause everything's fine, yeah, it ain't so rough, all I've ever known is love. And it's gonna be that way forever, 'cause we're all in this together. And nothing's gonna knock us down, no never. And why is that, y'all? The crowd answered with, Once again, we joined together this wonderful October night. And for the next 3 weeks, it's party and games with the ones who passed up into the light. That's what I'm talking about, Gal shouted, then joined them in singing. So for the next 3 weeks, it's party and games with the husbands, brothers, sisters, cousins, and wives. And that's how we live our lives, Gal said, finishing the song. She climbed down from the canopy as the people hurrahed and clapped. The guards took her hands and helped her down. All right, everybody, it won't be long now till the connection opens, Gal said. She looked at the clock tower. Its long hour hand was minutes away from 8 p.m. She returned to the band and gave them all high fives and firm handshakes. Then, as she walked away, they began to play a new song. Gal wanted to thank her mother for joining in the song, even if she was a bit of a buzzkill. At least she had tried for once to do something fun. But she was far, far ahead, speaking to Gal's older cousins and some bureaucrats. Bureaucrats. Seeing them gave her the same unnerving shiver down her spine that she had when looking at the prison. Bad things that she had decided, as always, to pay no mind to. I'll worry about all that when I'm older. Something wrong, Gal? Lawrence asked from behind her, the smell of peppermint still on his breath. Gal realized she'd spaced out and turned to her father.
Huh? Oh, no, Daddy. Gally, look what I got!
Jan ran up, holding a candy apple on a stick that was bigger than her own head. Her curly hair was getting stuck in the caramel. Her personal guard, Gudry, stood close by with a stern face, holding another apple. One for me? Jan took the apple from Gudry. And one for you. She held the one with hair stuck in it up to her sister. Gal took it and grinned awkwardly.
Gee, thanks, Jan. I'll get one for you too, Daddy,
Jan said. How very sweet of you, darling. The king laughed heartily. Jan pulled Gudry away as Gal stared at the candy apple, but didn't bite into it. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Is it about what your mama said, or sang?
Is what?
She looked up at her father's green eyes. Now, he looked to be spaced out. He blinked fast and grounded himself, then curved his mustache with a smile and patted Gal's cheek. Never mind, just enjoy the party. Besides, we'll get to see your tete very soon. He winked. Gal smiled, imagining her grandmother's wrinkly but glossy face when she smiled herself. You're right. There you are! Someone grabbed Gal by the arm and pulled her away from Lawrence. She looked at him and realized it was her older brother, Prince Euphemius. They're playing ropescotch over here, come on! He had turned 16 a few months ago, and he was currently wearing one of the vests their uncle had gotten from overseas for his birthday, opting not to wear the fancy coat it had come with. Under that was a pink dress shirt with a simple blue tie, very unlike a royal. If Gal hadn't grown up with him, she'd have no idea he was a prince, but he carried himself with a laid-back, yet dignified sort of confidence that made him come across as some kind of up-and-coming, respectable businessman.
See you around, Daddy.
Gal waved as she left with Euphemius, then handed the apple to one of her own guards. Lawrence waved back, with a weak smile. Chapter 3. Challenge. I found her, Euphemius said, as he and Gal emerged from the crowd to a clearing in the plaza where some children gathered. 3 of them were her friends. The other 3 she didn't recognize. There you are, Gal's husky friend David said. What's their total? She asked, observing one of the strangers hopping over a jump rope and at the same time playing hopscotch. This was ropescotch. I think that boy's over 100 skips now, Euphemius said. Gal narrowed her gaze and grinned devilishly. So he thinks he's hot stuff, does he? She rolled up her sleeves. The jump roping boy had stopped skipping and knelt over his knees, breathing heavily. Gal approached them, and he noticed her. Hold up, y'all. Looks like we got ourselves a challenger. He studied her with judging eyes. I know that look anywhere. The princess thinks she can beat the king. Only princesses I see here are you little girls, Gal said, crossing her arms with an impish smile. Euphemius, David, and her other friends laughed. You guys gonna take that one lying down? David said. Alright, your highness, the jump roper said mockingly. Show us what you got then. He stepped off to the side. Where are y'all from anyway? Gal looked at the 2 boys and the girl as she stepped over the first hopscotch square. I don't recognize y'all. Grand New Village, just outside the forest, the other boy said. You wouldn't know it, being stuck in the city and all. I'll bet you can't even make 2 skips in that dress, the girl holding the rope said. Her dress wasn't that much shorter or thinner than Gal's, which was just above her ankles. Gal didn't bother saying anything, though. Even if you could, ain't nobody can beat Jerry at ropescotch. She must have meant the jump roper. Gal cracked her neck back and forth over her shoulders and slacked her arms and legs. Please, I invented ropescotch. No, you didn't, Jerry said. Dude, it's a figure of speech, Euphemius said. I knew that. Jerry's cheeks flushed red. Ready, princess? The other boy said. Are y'all ready? Gal said, grabbing her skirt. 'Cause I want to see y'all try and beat my score after this. Jerry spat on the floor. Piece of cake. Gal began swinging the rope. The point of this game was to hop from the first space, marked on the ground, all the way to the last space, while skipping the rope. These kids had drawn 12 spaces, alternating between 1 and 2 next to each other. When Gal reached the last one, she would hop backwards without looking. If she missed any of the spaces or touched the rope with her legs or feet, she would lose. She went 12, 15, 18, 20 skips. You kids better not cheat or nothing, Euphemius said. You kiddin'? Jerry chuckled. I wouldn't be able to show my face back home ever again. If it ain't fair and square, I wouldn't dare, is what I say. 35, 40, 50 skips. Not bad, Jerry nodded. 65, 70, 80, 95. But can you beat my score of 150? Jerry said. A fire lit in Gal's eyes. 110, 120, 130. Jerry swallowed nervously. No way, the girl said. 140, 145, 6, 7, 8, 9, 150. I'll be a goblin's uncle, Jerry laughed in awe. The motion of the rope was getting slower and weaker. 170, 71, 72, 73, 70. You're on a whole other level. Jerry put his hands behind his head. Lungs of steel, this one, the other boy said. Gal continued hopping, going over 200 skips. That's our gal, David said. You sure she's human? The girl asked. Nope, Euphemius laughed. Finally, Gal ran out of steam at 343 skips. Her lungs, legs, and arms burned and felt heavy. Who's a princess now? Gal grinned while catching her breath. Not bad, Your Highness. Jerry bowed. Gal went up to him and held her hand out. Oh please, none of that silly stuff. Just shake my hand, dude. The boy raised his head and their hands met. Gal realized they had been playing right next to the Healing Wounds monument. Kids! A woman's voice came near, sounding distressed. She was about Morgan's age, but far lower in society. Wiry hair, dirty clothes. Leave the princess alone! We was just playing, Mama, Jerry said. The woman grabbed Jerry by the arm. It's time we got ready for your father to come from the Star Nation. They'll be opening it up any minute now. She looked at Gal and bowed. I ask for your mercy, Your Highness. Come on, kids. She urged her children along with a rolling arm. Bye, princess, Jerry waved. What's her deal? Gal said as she waved back. I don't know, Euphemius shrugged. David shrugged too. Gal looked up at the clock. Well, we still got some time. Want to go find something else to do? Something to distract me from that scared-looking woman. Chapter 4. The Star Ceremony. Gal, Jan, and Euphemius laughed, drying their hair off after bobbing for apples. David and the others had gone off with their families to prepare for the arrival of the spirits, so Gal made sure to meet up with her siblings. Gal! Her eldest cousin, 18-year-old Prince Owen, peeked into the tent. You need to be backstage yesterday, he tensed through his teeth. Gal playfully threw a towel over Jan, almost completely covering the small girl. Hey! Jan giggled as Gal tickled her. Euphemius threw a towel over Gal's head. Her vision went dark. She felt his cold fingers warming into her armpits, where she was most ticklish. Come on, Gal. Owen had stepped inside, and then threw the towel off her. Euphemius stopped tickling. Yeah, Gal said nonchalantly. But she was beginning to remember how much she had been looking forward to the ceremony. It was hard to remember much of anything with so much fun to be had today. Owen stood over her, tall and pursing his red lips that looked as if they could have been painted from lipstick, but they always looked that way. She threw off the towel. Nuh-uh. Bring the towel, Owen said. Her hair was still dripping wet. Bring it back here when you're done. He nodded to the woman who was running the apple game. We'll bring it back, ma'am. The woman told him not to worry about it. Well, I guess it's time, y'all. Gal turned to her siblings. You go, I want to play more. Jan dipped her head back in the tub, making a splash. Gal laughed with a snort. Go, Euphemius nodded toward the exit. We'll catch up. Owen urged her along with a hand against her back. Alrighty, see y'all there, she said. Then Jan lifted her head out of the water without an apple. Break a leg, Gal, Euphemius said. Make a leg, Gally, Jan said, whatever she meant by that. A pang shot through Gal's chest, feeling the separation from her siblings. She thought it silly she felt that way. After all, they would be together again in mere moments. Gal approached the town square, accompanied by her royal guards and Owen. An enormous crowd of what must have been hundreds was already beginning to amass around the square's fountain, where a wooden stage had been constructed nearby. Well, Owen said, you know who you're picking to hold the key crown? Nope, Gal giggled. That's just like you. Owen let out a heavy sigh, as if to say, I don't have the energy to stay mad at you right now. They went around to the back of the stage, where her cousins, aunts, uncles, the king, queen, and many guards were. There you are, Morgan scurried over to Gal. Sorry, I guess I just lost track of time. She laughed awkwardly. Oh, my word, your hair. Morgan's hands got lost in the curly mess on Gal's head. I can hardly see the crown. It'll be fine, Mama. Morgan struggled to pull her fingers out of Gal's hair and let out a heavy breath. You always say that. And I'm always right, ain't I? You only see what you want to see. Morgan's hands came free. A suffocating silence fell between them. Gal knew it would go away if she said something, anything, but she couldn't. Never mind, Morgan said. The tension released, and she took another heavy breath. Just let someone fix your hair for you. Afraid not, honey bun, Lawrence said, peeking out the curtain. The clock tower's enormous bell rang through the streets, completely drowning out all other noises. It can't be helped now. Go, dear, go. Morgan motioned Gal up to the stage. She passed all her cousins, aunts, and uncles, and stepped out from the curtains to a cheering crowd of hundreds in the square, and many more peeking in from the streets. Some even sat on the rooftops of the surrounding buildings. The clock tower's bell stopped. She could now hear her heart beating with excitement before a jazzy fanfare played on the stage. She approached the voice amplifier box near the edge, while her family sat down in ornate seats behind her.
What's going on, y'all?
She said into the box, then the music slowed to a stop. Been a fun night, ain't it? The crowd cheered.
I tell you what, the last time I led a ceremony was... Gosh.
She put her hands on her hips and cocked her head.
6 years ago now?
She laughed. That's the thing about having a big family. A lot of sharing and waiting your turn. She watched the faces of many eager families in the crowd, happy as can be. But I love my siblings, my cousins, my daddy, and my... She looked back, where her parents had sat in the largest 2 seats. Morgan gave a weak smile that fell quickly. And my mama. And all my other family. The ones who ain't alive no more, too. But that's what tonight is all about. To see our loved ones from the Star Nation. Now, I don't want to waste any more of y'all's time, so let's get this thing started. The crowd erupted with joy. Last time, I got my big brother Yuffie to hold the crown, and help me open the connection. But this year, I'm gonna do something y'all don't see too often. I'm gonna choose a non-royal, a special someone who's been putting up with me and my troublemaking ever since I was a wee little baby. She looked down where the palace staff sat in the front first few rows, trying to find her. It was a tough choice, cause I got so many very helpful maids at home. But this year, I want to ask a strong, beautiful, irreplaceable woman, the one and only Tanya Smirnova, to join me tonight. As soon as she said her name, she spotted Tanya, because her usually calm eyes, surrounded by wrinkles, went hysterically wide. Then she hid behind the other maids.
I see you, darling, Gal said. Don't you try hiding from me. Get on up here, silly.
The maids urged Tanya to go. Finally, she walked out from the crowd with her elderly face buried behind her hands. Morgan came to Gal, removed the key crown from her head and passed it to her, then returned to the seats. Tanya walked up the steps, hiding puffy red eyes behind trembling thick hands. Gal thought about how she herself never cried much. For some reason, it never really came to her. She wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not. She smiled away the thought, put the key crown down on the voice box, then reached up and pulled Tanya's hands away from her face. She took the crown from the box and held it up to her. Tanya's wet brown eyes darted, until they finally locked on Gal, and she took the crown. Thank you so much. Gal shoved against Tanya with a tight hug, wrapping her thin arms around the maid's wide waist. Tanya squeezed back. The poor maid's heart was beating fast like a drum being played by a chimpanzee. They separated. Miss Tanya, you got anything you want to say? Gal motioned to the voice box. I love this city, Tanya said nervously but with utmost sincerity. The crowd applauded. Gal removed the lock crown from her head and held it in front of Tanya, who stared and said, What if I mess it up?
It ain't no thing, sweetie. You've seen this done up here 1,000,000 times. It's just like opening up any old door. Okay.
Tanya rotated the key crown so it would fit into the lock-shaped jewel on the other crown. She looked at Gal, who nodded. Tanya eased the key-shaped jewel toward the lock shape. It passed right through as if the lockstone was suddenly no longer solid. The crowns lit up, and the northern lights exploded into blinding colors, brighter than a clear blue sky. The lights dimmed back down, and then separated like curtains and revealed an array of giant, symmetrical shapes within. From the openings, thousands of small, glowing turquoise figures emerged and descended upon the city. The crowd in the city cheered and cried. Gal, her whole family, and Tanya gazed up in awe. Gal leaned into the voice box. People of New Machoka, our families have arrived! The band on the stage played an uplifting, cleansing tune that washed away all troubles as the spirits dove gracefully to the streets, finding their loved ones and embracing them with laughter and tears. There's my sweet wee Choppy, an elderly voice above Gal said, using the Oya word for star.
Tete!
Gal called, using the Oya word for her grandmother, Mapi. Serene and glowing bright turquoise, old and round like Tanya, but a little more plump, and with darker skin, and more grays in her black hair that went longer than her waistline. They hugged. Mapi had a chemical smell coming off her, like paint.
I missed you so much, Tete,
Gal said, sinking into Mapi's stomach. They pulled away and looked at one another. Gal realized her grandmother's clothes had all kinds of paint colors splashed on them, almost drowned out by her spiritual glow. I missed you too, she tapped Gal's nose with her finger. Gal's cousins ran up to Mapi and loved on her with hugs. There was a pained cry in the distance, but Gal ignored it. Someone must have just been really, really happy to see their family. And she thought, even if there was something wrong out there, Someone else could deal with it. This was a beautiful moment. Nothing could ruin this. Not this year. This was the first year without Mapi's husband, Onwardo, visiting alongside her. He had passed to the land of peace, where all Star Nation spirits eventually went. If his absence at all bothered Mapi, she didn't show it, as she lived on her nieces and nephews.
Guys!
Euphemius ran to the stage in a panic. Mapi lit up.
Euphy, my sweet! Is Jan here?
Euphy said with heavy breaths. Gal's blood rushed to her toes. She's not with you? Morgan asked, running to the edge of the stage. Where are her guards?
Here, your majesty.
Gudry ran up next to Euphemius and bowed to Morgan, shivering.
We cannot find Princess January anywhere.
The family stirred with confusion. Gal's heart beat fast and painfully heavy. Morgan hushed everyone. Where did you last see her? Another shrill cry sounded in the distance, startling Gal. Then another, and then a whole chorus of loud crashes and screams.
Find out what those noises are!
Morgan stretched a commanding arm out at the surrounding guards.
And leave enough men here to watch the children.
Euphemius came up the steps. Morgan placed a hand on his shoulder as he said,
When I was done drying my hair off, she was gone. The guards waiting outside the tent didn't see where she went. She must have...
He blinked fast, trying to find the words.
She must have snuck out the back. I want squads searching the entire district for Princess January.
Morgan blurted out. The distant screams and crashes grew louder and closer as guards scattered and ran into the streets and alleys.
Your Majesties!
Another guard appeared. What? Morgan scowled at the promise of further bad news.
The prison! Many of the inmates from the gallery were let out by these... The reports are saying shadow creatures. And the inmates are here in the city. They're attacking the citizens.
Gal and her family gasped. The gallery. The cell block in Talbot Penitentiary that apparently contained the prison's most dangerous, demonic sorcerers. Gal had never been there. She never wanted to go there. But now, that darkness was coming for her home, for her peace. She remembered that shadow she saw in the water before. Somehow, she'd known it was a bad omen, but she'd ignored it. And now, Gal wondered if she should have pointed it out to her parents. Was that an opportunity she had missed to prevent all this chaos? By being herself, ignoring the darkness, had Gal allowed all of this to happen? Was that time here? That time she had always thought of as the far future? Could she no longer tell herself, I'll deal with it when I'm older? Lawrence, mother, Morgan said to him and Mapi, stay here with the children. She took the key crown from Tanya, put it on her long, dark, straight head of hair, and stepped off the stage with an armed escort. I'm going to look for January. She walked into the shadows of the city, her back tall. Gala watched her strong mother step into the darkness, meanwhile gritting her teeth at her own cowardice.
This is my fault.
Euphemius knelt down to Gal's face and put on a tough, stern stare. No, listen, Gal. It ain't your fault. It's mine. I wasn't paying enough attention to her. Gal's face twitched.
It's not just that. It
is no one's fault, your highnesses, Gudry said, her face even more stern, more tough than Euphemius. We should have posted guards at all the doors, but nothing can be done about that now. All that matters is finding the princess. Gal turned to the dark alleys. You're right. She placed the lock crown on her head and sprinted to a nearby alley, facing the darkness. The guards, Tanya, and her family called out for her, but she didn't look back. If she did, she worried she would lose this fleeting courage to face the darkness. As Gal ran through the alleys, her personal guards and Jan's guard, Gudry, followed close by, but Euphemius, with his own escort, struggled to keep up.
Slow down,
Euphemius called out.
I gotta find her!
She scraped the words out of a dry throat.
Do you even know where you're going?
Gal slowed to a stop. He finally caught up and asked, Where do you think she could have gone?
I don't know.
Her chest rose and fell fast.
There's a million things she wanted to do tonight. We've been talking about it for weeks, and I...
She bit her lip, and her vision was blurring with tears. She looked at one of her guards, sniffled, and noticed something strange.
Hey, why are you still holding that apple?
The man shrugged. I don't know, in case you wanted to save it for later?
It's covered in Jan's hair, Gal said, wiping her eyes. Why would I?
And then she wondered, Are you thinking the same thing that I am? Gudry said with raised brows.
Candy apples are her favorite.
Gal pointed at Gudry. Euphemius shook a confused head.
Wait, you think Jan's at one of those grocery stores?
He stuttered, then said,
But there's so many places that probably have candy apples.
Yes, but the princess knows of only one so far, Gudry said.
By the healing wound statue.
Gal struggled out a staggered breath.
It's better than nothing. Come on.
Chapter 5. A New Age.
Get down!
A soldier screamed in Morgan's ear as he pushed her to the ground behind a toppled carriage. Her gown ripped in many places as the brick street scraped her arms and legs. The soldier stood, peeked around the carriage, and fired his pistol. He pulled back and pressed against the underside of the carriage, then peeked again and raised his weapon, but did not fire. "Clear!" he shouted. Morgan and the other 2 men behind the carriage rose and followed him across the street. All around, her citizens screamed, fled, and fell to the ground as they were blasted at and cut down, their blood running through the cracks and crevices of the street. The ugly demonic sorcerers grinned with black teeth and deep, pale wrinkles as they slaughtered. They were human, once, but years of devoting themselves to the demonic arts had twisted their faces, making them look and act like monsters, uglier than goblins, more violent than trolls. The streets were filled with battle as soldiers fired their rifles and pistols at the sorcerers. Both sides took cover behind anything they could find: benches, crates, fountains, building corners. From their staffs, the demonic sorcerers and Morgan's royal sorcerers shot violent explosions of ice, electricity, fire, and other elements more powerful than guns. Her people were careful not to damage the buildings where citizens could have been hiding, but the enemy took no such care, blasting walls, shattering windows, and filling the streets with dust and destruction. The 3 men around Morgan gasped and collapsed, pierced by ice spikes. A woman with wild hair and a body covered in ice charged at her. Morgan focused on the crown on her head, imagining the large keystone in the center as a part of her very soul. Its spirit energy coursed and pulsed within her body like chills. A spear of dark green mist, twice as long as her body, formed in Morgan's hands. She spread her legs to firm her footing and lunged the spear at the ice woman, letting it fly from her hands until she grabbed the spear by the butt, halting its strike. A small glacier shot out of the ground, blocking the spear and protecting the attacker. The spear was undamaged, but it was frozen in place. Morgan ripped the spear out of the glacier, causing tiny shards and an icy cloud to obscure her field of view. The ice woman must have been counting on that. Morgan calmed her mind and listened for the slightest shift in the air, but shrill cries and explosions filled her ears. The woman screamed right next to her. A war cry? No, this was pain. The cloud cleared, and her foe was unconscious on the ground, electricity sparking with a harsh bright blue from her back. Chancellor Winona stood over the woman. She stared at the body with pointed, horizontal eyelashes, sharpening her already razor-blade, hawk-like eyes. Her black bun of hair was messy, and her green uniform was torn and bloodied, but it appeared most of the blood was not her own, as if it had splattered onto her.
"Winona!"
Morgan sighed with relief. The Chancellor looked from the body and softened her bird-of-prey eyes upon seeing Morgan. "Are you okay?" She stepped over the body and set a hand on Morgan's shoulder.
"Have you seen January?"
Morgan said. Winona's brows shot up.
"She's missing?"
Morgan looked at the ice woman's body, then to her own men lying in pools of their own blood. "When I find out who caused this," she grimaced, clattering her teeth as the sounds of battle raged around them. "We can't stay here." Winona pressed a hand to Morgan's back, leading her to the shadows of the alleys. The clock tower shined into the alley where Morgan and the few soldiers and sorcerers she had gathered watched the bloody battles around them. The others she had found, she ordered to search the quieter parts of the city, where there was no battle, where she hoped January had thought enough to run to. But Morgan followed the sounds of the loudest, most violent fights in the city, much to Winona's dismay, who had argued she should go with the other team. Morgan argued the best place to search for her daughter would be where the most danger was, in case she was caught up in it, and she wouldn't waver on that point. Winona had eventually given up, and they stalked the alleys and searched buildings, hoping to find a little princess, hoping she was still... "So it's just the ones from the gallery?" Morgan asked, trying to escape dark thoughts. She could faintly see in the darkness that... Winona nodded her head. "But there's something strange." "What?" "They only released the Washi inmates." Morgan shook her head. "What? What does that mean?" "I don't know, but whoever orchestrated this attack has a particular agenda. This is no random act of violence." A small voice cried out in the distance, where the feathered headdress of the Healing Wounds monument peeked over the commercial buildings of the plaza. "That's her!" Morgan yelped. She led the charge as they rushed across the streets leading to the plaza, dodging magic attacks. Another little scream. Winona and the others called out from behind Morgan as she rounded a corner, keeping her focus ahead on whatever she was about to see. The plaza was empty, except, past the monument, a fat man stalked toward a dark corner. January's frizzy hair bounced as she huddled against the wall, shivering.
Hey!
Morgan sprinted to the man. He turned, and her stomach lurched. That wiry goatee, that wart-covered pale face and missing teeth. This man was the powerful sorcerer Garten, the one who had killed her mother, Mapi. She had never forgotten every grim detail of that day, 10 years ago. Garten and his brother Fed had interrupted the star ceremony, slaughtering guards, storming the stage, and making their way straight to Mapi. Morgan had run desperately to retrieve the key crown from one of her nephews, who held it at the end of the stage. When she grabbed the crown and placed it on her head, Mapi was already on the ground. Garten had grinned as they crashed through the curtain and fled the scene. Morgan scraped a cry through her throat, asking, "Why would you do this?" Garten had turned around with that same twisted grin and said, "She thought she couldn't be touched. I just showed her how things really are." His voice was deep, hoarse, and burned her ears like acid. Soon after, the brothers had been intercepted in the road by the military and locked away in the offshore penitentiary that was supposed to be impossible to escape. Morgan figured that, knowing they would spend the rest of their lives there, would be the harshest punishment she could hash out. But now, as she rushed to Garten, with all of that past trauma rising in her mind like a swarm of bees, the hatred collecting with a harsh glow in her crown, she realized she hadn't gone far enough. A figure twice as large as him crashed in front of Morgan, forcing her to stop. It was the younger brother, Fed. He held a red staff with a metal dragon head, its mouth smoldering with fire.
Out of my way!
Morgan threw her hands forward and blasted a powerful mist of rage at Fed. He staggered, but brushed it off like it was nothing but a light slap. He tapped the bottom of the staff on the brick road and unleashed a fire blast from the dragon's mouth. Morgan created a thick wall of mist, blocking the flames. The air around her became suffocating and extremely hot. She turned to see that her guards and Winona were nowhere in sight.
Get away from her!
A girl's voice screamed in the plaza. Morgan wished it had been anyone but one of her own children. Princess Gal charged at Garten.
Gal, stop!
Morgan called out. Garten turned to Gal and grinned an ugly, fragmented smile. He gripped his black skull staff tightly, standing his ground while Gal ran fast across the brick plaza. The lock crown on Gal's head shined bright.
Gal, no!
Morgan screamed. Gal was far too inexperienced and immature to be using the crown in combat. If she wasn't careful, she could not only harm Garten, but herself and January as well. Garten summoned a black vine from the ground, growing fast toward Gal.
Look out!
Morgan cried as she was blasted by Fed's onslaught of flames. From Gal's crown, a green light blew up the vine, shattering it to pieces. Garten barked in frustration. The ground quaked and shattered as he summoned a whole sea of vines. The light shot from the crown again and blew straight through every vine, hurling Garten into a brick storefront, collapsing over him on impact. Fed turned in a panic and hurried to the rubble falling over his brother. Gal darted to January and held her tight. Their voluminous, curly heads of hair pressed together as they cried. As Morgan ran for her daughters, she noticed the entire family was now rushing into the plaza. The spirit of Mapi, Morgan's siblings and cousins, nieces and nephews, the soldiers she had explicitly commanded to keep the family in one place, and her husband. Morgan stopped.
I told you all to stay put! Is Jan okay?
Lawrence said, sweating. He stood tall and strong, despite the toll put on his body from running.
Look out!
Euphemia screamed, but before Morgan realized what had happened, smoke billowed from Fed's staff. He held his brother's lifeless body with pain and rage, screwing up his pockmarked face. Smoke covered the wall where Gal and January huddled. Winona knocked Fed out cold with an attack from behind and ordered her men to drag him away. The plaza was quiet, as Morgan's head trembled to the beat of her anxious heart. She burst through the smoke where Gal hugged January tight. Morgan smiled at the relief of seeing them unharmed, until she realized the smoke was coming directly from Gal. The smoke cleared, revealing a black scorch against her exposed back. Her arms fell away from January, and she collapsed to the ground.
Gal!
Morgan panicked and knelt down to her daughter. January sat in front of her older sister, paralyzed and wide-eyed, staring ahead at nothing, her young mind unable to process any of what just happened. Morgan held Gal in her arms and turned her over to see her deathly pale face.
Gal! Gal!
Morgan touched Gal's arm. It was still warm, but there was no pulse on her wrist or on her arm, and when she checked her neck and heart, there was no beat. She felt the rest of the family come close. muffling whimpers behind their hands. Lawrence joined her side and touched their daughter's forehead, groaning. She pulled Gal close to her chest and held her, for the first time in many years, tears soaking her messy hair. Lawrence wrapped his arms around them, shivering and crying. Mapi hovered over to the paralyzed January, whispered gently in her ear, and lifted her up, carrying her to the other children. Morgan buried her face in Gal's hair. A heavy presence fell over them. She looked up to see a pitch-black hand that caught no light had emerged from the shadows, lifting the weight of the crown from her head. The shadow recoiled into the darkness, disappearing with the crown. "The crown!" Winona yelled. Morgan looked up to the roof of a nearby building to see the shadow creature standing over the edge, holding the key crown. Its body crackled and shivered like a wild black fire. "What are you?" Lawrence shut up. "What are you doing?" Its voice was as dark and staticky as its body.
"Enacting centuries of inevitable revenge on these filthy Washi, and all the traitors who helped them. That means you, Queen Morgan."
"Drop the crown," Winona said. "Whatever you are." A rage burst out of Morgan.
"You killed my daughter!"
She stood with Gal in her arms and bared her teeth, blasting mist at the creature. The roof it stood upon crumbled, but it had dodged to another roof. "Put it down, and we'll give you a fair trial," Winona said.
"What I'm about to do is the least these monsters deserve, Chancellor."
"What do you want, demon?" Lawrence asked. "To take the ceremony away from all these people?"
"That's exactly what I want, Your Majesty."
It had no mouth, but by the curve of its featureless face, Morgan could tell it was smiling. The shadow turned to her.
"Say goodbye to your dead relatives, Queen. Forever."
It dropped to the ground of the roof and vanished. Morgan clutched Gal in her arms. "I want the entire force searching this country until that thing's head is at my feet."
"Tate!"
Euphemius panicked. Mapi drifted into the sky, where the northern lights were beginning to narrow to a close, losing their glow.
"Mother?"
Morgan passed Gal off to her husband and reached out for Mapi.
"Mother! I can't stop it, Morgan!"
Mapi flailed her limbs.
"Daddy?"
A familiar voice called out from behind Morgan. "No," Lawrence said grimly. Morgan looked back at Gal's body in his arms, where a turquoise spirit that looked just like her was ascending.
"No!"
Morgan ran to the spirit. Lawrence put her body down and reached for Spirit Gal's hands, but they kept slipping away.
"Mama? Daddy?"
Gal screamed. She floated higher and higher, in spite of her struggling.
"I got you, baby!"
Morgan grabbed Gal's hand, but it was as if some unknowable, undefeatable power kept forcing her daughter to slip away. Morgan lost her grip. Gal flew out of arm's reach as she cried.
"Mama, help me! I don't want to go! Mama! Mama!"
Morgan focused on the keystone and formed a long, misty arm that reached out and grabbed her.
"I got you, baby!"
Morgan nodded.
"I got you!"
Somehow, Gal slipped right through the mist's tight grasp, only ascending higher, her voice growing more distant. Morgan looked around in a panic.
"Somebody do something! Save my baby!"
Her family and royal soldiers looked up with red, swollen eyes. Mapi and Gal shot up into the sky, along with all the thousands of spirits that had been summoned that night.
"Morgan!"
Mapi cried, so distant in the sky.
"Mama!"
Gal called out as their voices faded away. Morgan reached with a weak arm. No. The northern lights swallowed every spirit into the star roads. The lights themselves faded into dim, translucent curtains, until they disappeared from the living world forever. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this audiobook. As I said before, I'd love to hear any feedback you can provide. Think of these upcoming chapter releases like an early access indie game, where you have the ability to give me direct feedback that I might apply to future versions of this story, such as an official publication or, God willing, an animated adaptation. After the first 20-ish chapters, this story will turn into an anthological, lesson of the week sort of format, but I won't yet spoil exactly how we get to that point. If you want to keep up to date with future releases, I think Wattpad and Royal Road and some of the other places that I might have posted this story to have ways for you to follow me, but I know for sure the best ways is to subscribe to this channel so you can see every audiobook release, join my Discord server to get a notification for every chapter release, and follow me on Blue Sky where I'll also be posting updates. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who supported me during my writing journey, my family, my critique partners at critiquecircle.com, everyone who watches my videos, my friends, just everybody who has been remotely involved in the process, And if there's anyone out there who has anything to spare, I have a Patreon and a GoFundMe linked in the description. Writing and very slowly making videos is the best I've been able to do these last few years with my health issues, and is currently the only way I can have any money coming in. But even if you can't financially support me, again, subscribing and just following me on all my socials, helping me to grow my following will hopefully get me to the point where I'm making enough ad revenue to also have a little bit coming in as well. But once again, thank you so much for checking out Gal the Ghost Princess. It really means a lot to me that if anyone got this far, that's huge. Thank you so much. Please leave a comment even if you don't have any feedback to give. Let me know you read the story. You don't even have to say whether you liked it or disliked it. Just, it would be nice just to hear from people, just to know that you got this far into the story. But y'all take care and keep an eye out for the next batch of chapter releases. And again, thank you so much. Bye.